What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Action Network podcast. I'm your host, Chris Raybon. This is our NFL divisional round betting preview. Today, we're going to build our divisional round six-pack of bets with the help of my co-host, the Prime Minister of Degenerate Nation, Stuckey. Happy divisional round. Best weekend in sports, in my opinion. I just want to remind all our listeners, if you're watching or listening on your phone and you want to instantly tail any of today's picks, go to the episode description. We've got DK links for all of these picks. If you click those links on your mobile device, your DraftKings app will open with the bet slip for that pick. It's very, very convenient, a great way to tail right away and not miss the best lines. All right, so for my first pick and the first overall of the divisional round six-pack, I'm going with Dalton Schultz over 3.5 receptions. This is the Texans at the Chiefs. Chiefs 8.5 point favorites. The total 41.5. And looking at this matchup, I really don't know where CJ Stroud is going to find open receivers, because we saw how much he struggled for that first half against the Chargers. This matchup is a lot tougher. We liked the Texans last week because the Chargers play some zone. They don't get as much pressure, especially on the interior. Chiefs, they can play man coverage. They play it at one of the highest rates in the league, seventh most. That'll probably go up because it looks like Jalen Watson is coming back, and he is one of the top graded man corners in the league, and he gives them the ability to man up all across the board pretty much. So Dalton Schultz is the only guy who I could see consistently being an option for CJ Stroud, because I think you're going to have, mix in pass blocking. You're going to Nico Collins, Steve Spagnuolo is excellent at taking away number one receivers. And now you're giving them almost a month to prepare. You just cut Deontay Johnson, who was getting open the most of anyone not named Nico Collins, but he just couldn't keep his mouth shut, started pouting after a win, which is, you've been on a team for a week. That's not going to cut it. And Cade Stover, your other tight end, he went on IR with a collarbone injury. He caught 4 passes on 4 targets last week. And when Stover's been out, Dalton Schultz's route rate has increased to about 87%. He's usually around 78 to 80%. So that's going to give him a couple more routes during this game probably. And Kansas City gives up the 5th most schedule adjusted targets to the tight end position, because they're very good at funneling action away from wide receivers, which I think is going to happen in this matchup. And I think CJ Stroud just not going to have time to really look downfield. So there's probably going to be more first read plays from Schultz than usual. And we kind of saw a similar thing take place in the first matchup. I don't know if it was by design or it was because, Tank Dell got hurt midway through, but we saw Dalton Schultz catch 5 balls on 8 targets with a touchdown in that game. So now you got no Dell, you got no Diggs, you got no Stover, and Mechie, the cat's out of the bag with him. He got 8 targets last week. So now you're probably going to probably pay more attention to him as well. So I think this sets up as a Schultz game for CJ Stroud, because it's, look across the board, all their other wide receivers struggle versus man more than zone. But I do expect a lot of man. Robert Woods, 0.02 yards per route against man coverage. And you have Mechie at 0.9 and Hutchinson is barely at half a yard. So, this is just going to be a struggle for this entire Texan offense, I think. I think the Chiefs are going to be a little bit more dynamic than we kind of remember them the last time they were, on our TV screens, because they've had a long time off. All their guys are healthy. Pacheco, Marquise Brown's had time to acclimate. Hopkins might not be on as much of a snap count, because I heard there was something to do with like the comp pick, that they might have been limiting him for that. So a lot of different things with this Chief offense that I think they could push it a little more than usual for, even for them. And we started to see that late in the year. They put up 27 on Houston, then they put up 29 on Pittsburgh to close out the year with their starters. So even though this is a low total game, I do think Kansas City is going to get a lead here. I think Kansas City is probably going to be better in the pass game than the Chargers were, because they're going to have time to prepare. I do worry a little bit still about Kansas City O line, depending on what they do with Humphrey and Tooney. But this is just a tough matchup for Houston because you got Jones coming on with interior pressure. Like the tackles are going to give up pressure anyway, but like the interior pressure is just like this Houston interior line is very bad, pretty much their biggest weakness. So don't like the matchup for Houston's offense at all. Don't think they're going to be able to run it. So I think you're going to see a lot of Schultz dump offs, whether it's early in garbage time or a mixture of both. So going Schultz over 3.5 receptions.
Yeah, funny enough, I was actually, if you didn't go with Schultz, I was going to go Schultz over receiving yards. I'm going to play
Okay.
this as well, but I like Schultz over receiving yards. And even though I listened to your Fantasy Flex episode with Kerner, which is always a must listen, especially during playoff year, and he hates Schultz this week. So I was surprised that you went with Schultz. Um, but
It's a funny story about that because it was like matter of fact, I'm gonna let Sean tell it on the next flex. I'll yeah, go listen to the next episode and we'll talk about it. I'm not even gonna get in this business, but yeah, what do you like about him? What do you like about
so
Schultz?
yeah, I dug deep here, and I really like the matchup. I mean, as soon as he went out, like you said, when Dell went out in the first matchup, I tweeted out, get ready to get targeted, Schultz, because that's what's going to happen in this particular matchup. So I like over yards and you're over 3.5 catches. A tight end has gone over 40 yards in 12 of 17 games versus Kansas City, excluding week 18. That's just one tight end, not total production. And now you have Kate Stover on IR. A tight end's gone over 3.5 catches for what it's worth in 11 of 17 games. Tight ends on average against Kansas City, 6 catches on close to 8 targets for just under 70 yards per game. That's their primary weakness on defense. And as you mentioned, Schultz 5 for 45 on 8 targets in the first half. So, and they're likely to be playing from behind. And I think the other thing to keep in mind is if you look at what Stroud did from week 12 on, I mean, this is a team early down pass rate, weeks 1 through 11, 52.7%. Early down pass rate since week 12, 63.2%, third in the entire NFL, which is like what a lot of people have been clamoring for. 71% in the wild card round. And this is removing game state when the win probability is greater than 80% for either team. So removing garbage time. They've gone from like 50% early down pass rate to 63, 64% since week 12. Their offensive line's also in a little better shape than it was in that game against Kansas City. Because in that game against Kansas City, they had a couple offensive linemen go down. You had Green in there. They had Dell go down. I mean, they were cooking the Chiefs' defense before they lost Dell and some offensive linemen. They also had some horrible calls go against them. And this isn't like Kansas City refs favor Kansas City, but just like there was a couple offensive pass interference calls, one on each way, that was really bad. So yeah, I think Schultz, you're probably gonna get a lot of too high looks. Stroud's really struggled against them. He's gonna be under pressure a lot. You're probably gonna get McDuffie on Collins a lot again. And who else are you trusting? Like you mentioned, Woods, he can't get separation. Like he's a guy that'll get you a couple first downs a game against zone, just savvy guy, but he's not going to get any separation against man. And I don't think Mixon's going to have much success running against this Kansas City defense. And yeah, so I think they're going to have to throw a lot. They're throwing a lot more on early downs, and I think Schultz is going to be the beneficiary against the Kansas City defense. That's kind of their one weak area where you can exploit them is to the tight end. And you mentioned Mixon staying in to help pass block. You don't want Schultz doing that. Like
Nope.
Schultz is a miserable pass blocker. He also has like a little shoulder injury. Like he's going out in routes, and he's going to be the check down guy. So and ultimately, I think this game is difficult for me to handicap. I'm probably going to be on the Texans plus 8.5 just because I'm like a tad under 7, and that's assuming a big bump for this Kansas City offense. Like, think about it. They're going to be fully rested now. You got to assume that Kelsey, who has what 70 plus yards receiving in like 13 or 14 straight games and 5 plus catches. I mean, it's insane.
In playoffs, yeah. In five,
in
yeah, five
playoff
plus
games.
catches, yeah, yeah.
I mean, we should have just taken his props for
Well,
this game.
there
But
is at 5.5. So I mean, with all
what
the
about
new
the
receivers,
yardage
it's
though? I think he's
kind
70
of
plus
dicey.
yards in all those games.
I mean, my line is still closer to like 50, 55. So it's like the books are kind of priced like it's Travis Kelce. You know it's going to be inflated when it's Travis Kelce. Like that's
But we say that every time, and he still goes
yeah,
over.
it's
But
true.
so I do think the Chiefs' offense might be underrated. Now,
Yep.
I'm very curious to see what they do at left tackle because if you put Tooney out there, you got to they're it's been a little more settled, but they're helping him a lot. And then the run game gets worse with Caliendo at left guard. The run game is best when Tooney's at left guard, but then you're really vulnerable at left tackle. Although they left whoever's out there more on islands, and the Texans do have a really good run D. And then if you get in the known passing situations with their tackle situation against Hunter and Anderson, they could create some negative plays here. Now, and they have the corners to match up on the outside, but it's probably just going to be like a lot of Mahomes underneath stuff, like just paper cutting them to death down the field. Because I do think the Texans defense is getting disrespected here. What I worry about is just their offense, like the pressure they give up. They're not going to be able to run it. It's like so much is you're going to have to like how much can Nico Collins do with all the attention on him? But the Chiefs are going to be at home. You're a dome team going outdoors in the freezing cold. And yeah, I mean, like you can always expect they're going to look a lot better. Like you have Worthy, who started to look better as the year went on. You had Hollywood Brown is fully back now. Hopkins fully assimilated. You have all this time off. Everyone's going to be rested. So I'm sure they're going to have like a really good script. And so there's a lot of things working against the Texans. But and Mahomes is 6-0 in the divisional round, but 16 touchdowns, no interceptions, 116 pass rating, completing over 70% of his passes. But it's 3-3 against the spread as a favorite of 6 or more points, 10-2 against the spread in all other playoff games. Stroud's been good as a dog. They did just go to Kansas City, which should help with like familiarity and that atmosphere. So I think the line is just a little too high, but am I worried about just like the Texans offense just does absolutely nothing? Yeah, a bit. But I think in order for them to have any chance, Schultz has to clear these
Yeah.
numbers and be a part of this. I also think another, and for what it's worth, by the way, 18 straight favorites of over a touchdown have won straight up in the playoffs. But we haven't seen two. We have two favorites of over a field goal, over a touchdown. We haven't seen multiple favorites of 7 or more points sweep against the spread in the divisional round since 2001. 16 straight instances where at least one dog covered. And home teams coming off the bye in the divisional round have not been great against the spread. 33, 42, and 1 against the spread, 44%, 17, 24, and 1 as a favorite of 7 or more points, 42%. But yeah, I just think this line is a little too high for a total this low with an elite. The Texans might have the best defense left in the playoffs. You would argue them or the Eagles. But is this when like the loss of Petrie and Ward with like the Chiefs just picking them apart over the middle of the field? Is that where those losses hurt? And this is going to have to be a good. I still trust Stroud. He's had a bad year, but he's dealt with just a ton of offensive line injuries, wide receiver injuries. I still trust him enough, I think, to back him. He has to use. I think he has to use his legs more as well, which he showed. I think he was more willing to do last week, and now it's a playoff game. You see quarterbacks do that more often. I think a couple scrambles will be big, getting the ball to Schultz, and you're just gonna have to find a way to get a couple deep shots to Collins. Just throw it up, hope he makes a play. 'Cause you're probably going to see a lot of McDuffie on him. But I do think ultimately the Chiefs' defense is overrated. And I know they're going to have Watson back. Their pass defense was fine the last 5 weeks of the season without Watson. People were talking. I mean, I mentioned the loss of Watson was big because the drop off to Johnson is huge. But people are talking about Watson like he's certain. Like this guy isn't like the second coming of a. It's just that the drop off is big. But you have to remember this Chiefs defense. I still think they're vulnerable against the pass. Like week one, they played the Ravens. They give up 450 yards. Since then, I mean, did they play anybody that was healthy? Like You go back. They play the Bengals without Higgins. Atlanta loses 2 starting offensive linemen in the first half, and it was we saw how bad Cousins was. McConkey doesn't play in one matchup for the Chargers. Herbert and 2 starting offensive linemen were hurt in the other. Dell gets hurt for Houston and multiple offensive linemen. San Francisco loses everybody, all their skill players before and then early in the game. You had no Evans or Godwin for Tampa Bay, who still kind of torched them. Cleveland was really banged up. No Njoku. I mean, you can go on and on. So I like, especially the offensive line injuries. I think the defense is a little bit more vulnerable. Now you trust Spags, and they'll have a good game plan, and they might just be able to pressure the Texans to death. But I think that Stroud at least will have some opportunity. But on the flip side, the Chiefs' offense might be underrated because of all the pieces they have. So
I think it is. And they're not going to be able to run that well. But what they do, what they usually do in the playoffs is they go super pass heavy, but high percentage stuff. And what they're going to be able to do now with Marquise Brown, Hopkins, and Worthy as your 3 receivers, you got Kelsey, you still got Gray if you need to kind of help out on, Chip on the edge. And so you could throw him in there. And then you got 3 running backs that you can rotate in. So like the skill guys are fine.
Pacheco healthier now too.
Yeah. The skill guys are fine. You still got a good interior line. And Mahomes will get you through the rest. And guys are going to come open quicker because now you got more speed on the field. You got Worthy who can go to the slot. You got Brown, and all their guys play every position at receiver. That's another thing about the Chiefs. They all can go in the slot. They all can motion. And I think Worthy is going to be a really big factor in this game because we saw the Chargers and McConkey. I mean, that was their own, as we predicted, that was their only source of offense. And I think Worthy is going to be able to kind of go in the slot, get the matchups away from some of those other Houston corners and on those Houston linebackers or safeties in the absence of Ward and Petrie. So Worthy's going to be a big factor, and he might be a factor in the run game as well. He has 3 rushing touchdowns, so that is another way for them to kind of generate offense. And then for Houston, I'm really worried about just Jones, and because you can do things to mitigate pressure on the edge. Houston hasn't a lot of times, but right up the middle, I mean, somebody in CJ Stroud's lap, like that's the last thing he needs with a guy like Spags who can take away Nico. Like this is just a nightmare matchup for him. I mean, think about how bad that offense looked against the Chargers until he drops the. First of all, that the fact that they didn't call intentional grounding. I mean, how close was it to just a disaster of a drive, and then it turns around and they end up going down the field and scoring? I mean, that. We're lucky we got out of there with, it just hurt Herbert just melting down like what I mean? It's
well,
I don't trust it to go. I don't trust lightning to strike twice here.
I think if you're the Texans, you have to just trust Stroud. You're not going to run it. So no, but you just that has to be your game plan. I think you have to spread them out, even though your weapons are limited, right? Like you just use Schultz, Collins, and then your mishmash of other receivers. Spread them out. And Stroud hasn't been great in the quick passing game, but that's what you're going to need here. Quick pass, and then he's got to use his legs when needed. But the biggest key is the defense has to win this game. And the Texans defense is capable of creating havoc.
Holmes and like the best supporting cast he's had in like years since.
Yeah, no, but where I'm getting to is, and this is a parallel situation for Houston because Stroud is much more likely to turn it over here. You have to turn it over. Now, the Chiefs have been getting turnovers lately. They haven't, and Mahomes hasn't turned it over forever. Texans got to win the turnover battle, get a turnover early, and just keep this low scoring. So it should be an interesting game. I'll probably be on Texans just because, I mean, this line was 3 weeks ago. They lost Dell and Ward since. They also got Al-Shaair back, another guy back. Their offensive line's be in better shape. Getting out to 8.5, I know the bye. I know Chiefs are healthier. Their offense might be underrated, but I think I have to take 8.5 here. But definitely some concerns. But love Schultz. But for I was
gonna say you just have to apply that 2024 adjustment to the favorite. Like you just got to give it that extra point and a half bump, and save yourself the misery, bro. I'm telling you, like this last week was our week to cash on Stroud one last time. Like this might be the momentary end of like the Chiefs not covering these spreads. Next week I think maybe you fade the Chiefs because then you're going up against teams that either team I think that could beat the Chiefs straight up. So I'm going to lay off. I do agree that the line is like I'd make it like around 7.5, but yeah, I'm not going to put myself through that.
I'm probably going to be stubborn. But for my first pick and the second overall of the divisional round six pack, I'm going with Sam LaPorta over 48.5 reception yards for the Detroit Lions. This is for the Lions Commanders game on Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern on Fox. Lions 9.5 point favorite, total 55.5. It's super high total for a playoff game, but historically, these really high totals indoors in the playoffs have gone over. I don't have a strong feel for the side or total in this game because what I think it's probably going to come down to is fourth down variance.
Yep.
I mean, these are two of the most aggressive fourth down teams in the NFL. Commanders number one in fourth down EPA of any team over the past 20 years. How much longer can they get away with it? They're also not that explosive of a passing team in general. So like the Lions can play their aggressive man, and Daniels hasn't been as good against man. He hasn't been great against the blitz. Like McLaurin's just gonna have to go off. Diami Brown's gonna have to they're gonna have to. And it's gonna come down to Daniels' legs, but I don't know how Washington gets stops. I mean, their D is bad across the board. I mean, your 24th rush success rate, 27th rush EPA. I, I, I don't. If I Lions been so good first half against the spread, place will be a zoo. I maybe a slightly into Lions first half at like -6, but fourth down variance is going to play a huge role in this game, and I wouldn't be surprised if like the Commanders have a backdoor chance. But I don't think this is like the ideal offense to beat the Lions' flawed, aggressive cover one blitzing D. But we'll see. Elite, they do struggle with mobile quarterbacks. Matt McLaurin, who just has to go crazy here. But the reason I like LaPorta here, for a number of reasons, but Jared Goff is going to face a lot of man coverage here. He's elite versus man coverage this year. He's going to have time to throw. LaPorta is dominant against man coverage. Even go back to college. In college, he had 2.72 yards per route run, which is absurdity. He's also a huge red zone target share. I like his reception yards over. I'm probably going to play him anytime touchdown. There's a lot of options there, but the line should score here. But Washington, 26 DVOA versus tight ends. They're third worst in the NFL in defending the middle of the field. And LaPorta is really coming on end of the year. And I don't think the market's fully adjusted for that. He wasn't healthy for most of the year. And Campbell has mentioned that. Now, you look at his last 5 games. By the way, the 4 of his last 5, he's gone over his reception yards number and receptions. But if you look at the first 11 games this year, he had 31 catches on 44 targets for 391. Last 5 games, 29 on 39 targets for 335. So his average on the first 11 games, 2.8 catches on 4 targets, 36 yards. Last 5 games, 5.8 catches on 7.8 targets for 67 yards. 18-game pace. You just look the first 11, about 50 catches, 639 yards. His 18-game pace over the last 5, 105 catches, 1,200 yards. And for what it's worth, his last 2 playoff games last year, he had 9 catches on 11 targets in both of those games. I also think that the Commanders, their numbers against tight ends are bad, but I think they're even worse than the numbers show. Number one, they played a very easy schedule, but they faced, Hurts got hurt. They faced Pickett, Cooper Rush, Dalton, Trey Lance, Deshaun Watson, Spencer Rattler. And then if you dig a little deeper, played the Cowboys without Ferguson, the Eagles without Goddard, the Cardinals without McBride. And McBride is elite versus man too. He didn't play in that game. So Higgins, I think, was their number 1 tight end. So I think they're even worse than their numbers show based on their schedule and most importantly, the injury luck. So I think LaPorta is going to have easy catches here and a huge day. I mean, I think he's probably going to end up with 8 targets, probably a couple explosives. And the Commanders are bad against the run. But you can't just, they're going to have to sell out here. They're going to have to come up because the Lions are going to come out and they're going to run it. And I think that's just going to open up opportunities for LaPorta. So give me over 48.5 yards. I don't project these things well. you guys do that. I checked with Kerner and a couple other guys I trust who were like 50, 51. So at least they're over this number.
Yeah, I think around 50.
And Brock Wright, 0 targets his last 4 games. So like it's going to be LaPorta. You also have Lattimore back healthy. He's got a game under his belt. Maybe he's a little more effective this week and kind of takes a few catches away from Jameson Williams. But I think LaPorta is going to have a big day. The only thing I worry about is just the Lions run it a million times. But this is a high total. They should score. I mean, they're going to put up points. And I think LaPorta will have a bunch of easy catches here. What do you think?
Yo, yeah, I think this whole Lions offense is going to cook. I think they're going to be very they're going to Ben Johnson. This is his last his last hurrah here before he takes a head coaching job somewhere. So he's going to be in his. The only thing you might want to worry about is like that Dan Skipper doesn't take some targets away from LaPorta. Like that's your biggest concern. But yeah, I think Washington. That's Wagner I saw him on the injury report. So
yep.
That could be an issue too as well. But with Lattimore here, it kind of changes the calculus a little bit of how you attack Washington compared to earlier in the year. So yeah, those tight end numbers could get even worse just because now you have a corner who you're a little bit less likely, or a lot less likely, maybe, who knows, to target. Although he wasn't playing as well as he was earlier in the year either. So, but yeah, I think LaPorta just based
and Wagner
on
was a DMP again today, second straight day.
And LaPorta, the crucial thing for him is earlier in the year, it was kind of like the Mark Andrews situation with him. Like, I don't know if he wasn't healthy or what.
He wasn't running
healthy.
Routes.
He wasn't running routes.
They've confirmed that he wasn't healthy.
So he's been at about, I'm projecting him for 90%, around 90%, whereas most of the year he was, 65, 70, then he got up to 80. But yeah, playoffs, he should be a full go. Your biggest concern is probably they blow him out. But I actually lean Washington here. I think that all the concerns we had about this Lion defense and them being able to kind of get through this gauntlet, or just get through everything and get to the Super Bowl after all these injuries still applies. We know now that Darnold was just a pumpkin. Like we knew it before, but we shouldn't just forget everything we kind of felt about the Lions just because Sam Darnold is a pumpkin and gave him a bye. You know what I mean? Like, this is still a team that this Commander team they got us last week with the Bucks. I mean, how many times did the Bucks stop them? Great game plan by the Bucks, and just, you can't stop a team. It's like 8 times in a row at the goal line. So that fumble was just massive, and it still took them till 4th down. And it was a ball that could have been broken up. So I do think there's some regression coming, but at the same time, it's Jaden Daniels' legs. If he's getting 4 downs against that defense every time, they're probably going to keep up and keep it within a score, backdoor or not. So yeah, I would win Commanders, hoping it gets to 10. That would make me feel a little better. But I think I feel a lot more comfortable about a team like that than a team like the Texans if I'm betting one of these bigger numbers, just because I know for a fact that the Commanders can do this. I don't know if the Texans can do this with offensively. So yeah, I'm just not sure the Commanders are going to run it, and they haven't been as good against man. Like, the Lions are the second most blitz heavy defense, doing it even more now, and they're going to play as man as much as anybody. The Washington has not had an explosive passing offense. You told me not to play under 58 against Minnesota. Like, now you're scared of Washington. Washington will be fine, bro. Sam Darnold, Washington, I think Washington will be fine. We know what Sam Darnold is. I think that's just the issue. I think we were all worried about the Lions defense. Now we're just acting like they're fine, because they had one good game. I mean, I don't think that they're fine at all, but I don't know if this is the perfect matchup to fully exploit it. Because the problem is I don't see why. Minnesota had a good D. On paper, they could do Washington's defense is legit bad. How are they stopping this Lions offense indoors? So, and then I just worry about the 4th down variance crashing down to earth for Washington. And you can't get away with that against Detroit in Detroit. Yeah, no, that's probably a deep, maybe a Lions team total over or something too. I mean, I would rather take that
33, super high, but I don't mind.
I mean, how are they not getting to 35? They're getting 5 touchdowns in this game, unless Washington just slams Brian Robinson into a wall for 20 times like they did against Tampa Bay.
Yeah, you would hope they don't do that here.
Yeah, his prop is down to like 8 and like his carry prop is like 8.5. I'm actually showing a little value on the over now. Like it's like.
Do you like LaPorta over 4.5 catches or no?
I would rather the yards because he's explosive, and this is a situation where you got to remember, from a volume standpoint, what you don't want efficiency necessarily, which is why I like the Schultz catches, because like I think Houston is not going to be efficient, so like there's going to be a lot of opportunities where with this Lions team, there's going to be explosive plays. So like let's say LaPorta only catches 2 for like 70 yards. That's a possibility because let's say JMO catches a long touchdown. That's a drive that LaPorta can't do anything. Let's say Gibbs gets a long touchdown. That, like if there's explosive plays, it takes away because 4.5 catches, that's a lot of catches. That now you're talking about more than 1 per quarter. So there's a blowout potential. So yeah, for LaPorta, I would definitely lean yards in that situation because like you're indoors and explosive.
All right, where you go next?
All right, so for my second pick, the third overall of the divisional round 6-pack, going with the Eagles, Rams, first half under 22.5. This is obviously the first game on Sunday. Eagles are 6-point favorites. The total is 43.5, 12 p.m. Eastern on NBC and Peacock. And this has been a popular play for me, these Eagles first half unders. Another one I hit last week. I think there was 10 total points in that first half, and they all came in with the Eagles in the first quarter off that fumble, pretty much as you described. And in this matchup, the reason I like the first half under is because I do think as the game progresses, there are some things that I don't like about the Rams defense. Like I thought they wore down in that first matchup, and you saw Saquon Barkley bust off both of his explosives in that second half of that first matchup. But early on,
he ran for
255, I believe it was.
255, but he only had 70 something at the half.
Right, only. Only.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying relative to 255.
Right. So he had a couple long runs. He's going to wear the defense down. They did play on, they were the last team to play, so it's a little bit of a short rest situation there. So don't love that for the full game. And Philadelphia is just prone to these slower starts, and I think McVay is going to lean into that. Last week, what you saw was we're indoors, and so he felt a lot more comfortable with Stafford going pass heavy.
It was brilliant game plan. Play action.
Yeah, great game plan. Down. Yeah, so Stafford started super hot, like 10 out of 10, and it was just they didn't run Kyron nearly as much as they had been in some other matchups, but this matchup, outdoors, cold weather, and if you look at McVay's game plans, a lot more run heavy in the first half in these kind of matchups. And you're looking at some of these outdoor games like the Niners game on Thursday night. Like there was just a few of those games late in the year where the Seahawks game where the Rams just really struggled early in that game. And I know their offensive line is in better shape, but still, I think this is going to be a heavy Kyron game. That's what we've seen from McVay as like an underdog and outdoors. Essentially, when he doesn't think his pass offense can have as much success, which against this Eagles defense they lost to Kobe Dean, but still excellent corners, still going to give the Rams some problems protection wise. I think so. I think this is a spot where he's going to want to run early, and we know the Eagles are going to run early. But the bonus is the Rams defense has gotten a lot better. It's not going to be easy to stop this Eagles team, but Jalen Hurts hasn't looked quite right. He hasn't played amazingly well. We don't know if AJ Brown is fully 100% healthy.
He's not.
Rams love to play zone. You tend to have less touchdown passes and things like that against zone. Tends to funnel the ball more to Smith, which, I mean, it's still not, it's still explosive, but less so than AJ Brown. So just a lot of different situations where I think that you're going to continue to see both of these teams kind of play the way they have in the first half. And that's been for the Rams 12-6 to the under, for the Eagles 11-7 to the under. So both of these teams among the most profitable first half under teams. And you brought it up last week. The Eagles, they start so who knows how many points they would have scored if they didn't get that fumble, because first quarter they are averaging, 4 points per game now, including postseason. that is 19th. And then first half, they're middle of the pack around 12.3. But, 12, even if they get to
They also face
14,
the easiest schedule of
yeah.
opposing defenses in the NFL.
Yeah, and the Rams are much improved. So I do think the Eagles probably get at least, they probably punch one in, at maybe even two, but I'm not looking at this Rams offense as starting as hot. I think they're just going to be a lot more run heavy. I think some of those red zone issues could creep up because it usually doesn't go as smoothly for Stafford in the red zone either. Outdoors, you worry about the kicker, who was an issue earlier in the year and has gotten a lot better, but that could creep up at any time. Stafford in the cold weather.
Elliott too. Elliott right now is
yeah,
going through some stuff.
So yeah, and even for Fangio, we know what he does. He wants to protect against the explosive, and that's kind of that's also what McVay. He was obsessed with that kind of defense too. And so like both of these teams don't want to give up explosives. You saw that first half under cash in the first meeting, even with the Eagles scoring with a minute. I believe it was like a minute and a half to go in the first quarter. They scored a touchdown in the first half, and they scored a touchdown. And the first half under still cashed in that game. So I think there was 20 first half points in that one. So yeah, I think this is just for a playoff game, a little bit too high. But over the full course of the game, I do worry about the defense wearing down for the Rams, and I worry about once the Rams, if they get behind, Stafford getting into a little bit of a groove, them figuring out how exactly to exploit the Nakobe Dean loss. They have 4 different tight ends if Higbee plays, and Higbee's playing really well. So over the full course of the game, I could see this guy with some experience start to get it together. But I think this is going to be another ugly start for the Rams in cold weather. And I think the Eagles, start a little bit. I mean, they always start a little bit slower, but I think this Rams defense is underrated. So give me first half under 22.5. Would love it to get to 23, but looks like this total is going the other way. Maybe if we get some good weather, it might pop up, but I don't think we're getting a 23, but that is a key number. But I'm expecting this to be, in the 20, 17 to 20. So I'm still playing the under 22.5. But if you don't see me put it in the app, that's probably why I'm just waiting to see if we get a increase again, because it did open for full game at 40, I think 46.5, and it got steamed down. So as we get closer to kickoff, the public, could get some public money. Maybe it shoots up enough to get us to at least a 23 flat, but we'll see. Anyway, we're any other thoughts on this matchup before we go on?
I might have some. I like this. I'm going to be on this. I might have some full game under too, just because I think the Eagles win probably, and they're so good in the second half of games, just bleeding clock with just 8-9 minute drives, and you can run efficiently on the Rams. Like you look at their yards before contact, they don't give up explosive runs. Now they do give up explosive passes, which is a concern. But Hurts isn't right, and AJ Brown is 100% not fully healthy. Yeah, I mean, I went back and watched that game last week. His knee is not. He is not at 100%. That's huge because the Rams corners against the number 1, number 2 receivers, it's troubling. Devontae Smith didn't even play in that first game, and haven't seen that right tackle didn't play for the Rams, and Higbee didn't play, so that worries me a little bit. And Barkley versus the Rams linebackers is a big mismatch in this game. But yeah, the one thing that gives me concern is if just Hurts. The last week was rust and the concussion after effects, and the offense just looks like it did, say, in the Steelers game. All of a sudden, it was just completely explosive, and they start throwing it down the field. But what have we seen all year? We can believe in this Eagles defense. The Fangio versus McVay matchup is a fascinating one. That's going to be a great chess match. McVay, this is a tough situational spot for the Rams, short rest disadvantage going across the country, but he has been good in these spots. He's 16-7 against the spread on short rest, 12-2 against the spread the last 14. The other thing I worry about is the Eagles' offensive line. It can neutralize that Rams defensive line. That's what happened in the first meeting. And then the back end is problematic for the Rams. And the Eagles do a great job. They don't allow anything explosive. They're so disciplined on the back end. Nakobe Dean will hurt a little bit. We'll see how much of Trotter, the young kid, we'll see how much they use him there. Well,
the good thing is for them that when they go to dime, Bond usually wears the green dot. So he's already has experience communicating, because that's what you worry about as far as unders with a green dot out is that not even though I mean Dean is obviously a talented green dot, but more so you worry about communication issues affecting other players, like the safeties, the corners that can lead to explosive plays. But the fact that you have another excellent coverage linebacker that also has experience communicating and wearing the dot, I think is a big help, to the Rams defense. And I think also I do think was it Shula? I think he's calling some good games. I think this Rams team kind of knows what they are, and I think you saw against the Vikings, why did Sean McVay rest instead of playing his guys? Because he knew rest, he could go indoors, and he had confidence in his offense, even though that defense was highly ranked. But he had confidence in his defense. This matchup, I think, was the one he was hoping to avoid. A cold weather matchup at Philly where they put up 37 in the first meeting. So this one, I think he's going to play it a little closer to the vest, try to shorten the game, hand it to Kyren. So yeah, I think the first half still is better, but full game, there's some ways it could get there. I mean, the Eagles could just as well lay an egg too. I mean, I think this Rams, because the line for Stafford, he didn't really have his full line. So if they could just protect, because a lot of the sacks he took in that first game, I went back and watched, there was a couple, it was like one or two right before the half where they were just trying to get points or just punt it away. And then there was another one with a couple more with McClendon, who's not playing anymore, who just got beat right off the ball. So a lot of the sacks that he took were preventable. If those are preventable and the Rams could just kind of, get a couple first downs with Kyren each drive, I think this is very good under type.
Yeah, I do expect them to start. So there could be some rain here. To put some numbers to it, Rams first quarter offense, 29th in success rate, 30th in EPA per play. Eagles first quarter offense, 22nd in success rate, 24th EPA per play. Although the Rams first quarter defense is the worst in the league in EPA per play for what it's worth. But if you look, these are two top 6 red zone defenses in terms of touchdown percentage allowed. Below average offenses in the red zone. I think the Rams are 25th in touchdown percentage inside the red zone. Look at the Rams outdoors. Stafford, one of the reasons I think that bye was smart is because they didn't have a bye since like week 5. Stafford, older quarterback. Now, outdoors, short week, he might not look as good. Here's what the Rams have done in the first half. I'll close with this. And in outdoor games this year. And those numbers for the first quarter are all their games. Just here, and they're bad. Here are their games in the first half outdoors. Down 10-6 at Chicago. Down 13-3 at Seattle. Up 14-10 at New England. 3-3 at San Francisco, rain game. Down 9-6 at New York. 5 games outdoors in the first half. They were outscored 45-32. Average score 9 to 6.4. So it's been ugly.
I just rewatched all of those games in preparation for this podcast. So imagine how I'm feeling right now. I just watched all that disgustingness. That's how I can remember specific sacks about oh man, it was bad. And I think that last week was an aberration. They had all the time to prepare. Like you said, bye, time to get healthy, time to prepare, and an opponent that they felt confident that they could do some things. I don't think they're going to feel as confident in what they did last week, being able to work the same. Because I even remember looking at that game at certain points and being like, it was almost like the Slowick thing with Houston, where I know they've been passing on early downs for a few weeks now, but I was just like, I can't believe they didn't hand it to Kyren right there. I can't believe they didn't hand it to Kyren right there. And they were just picking up chunks. I don't think that's going to happen this week.
Yep. One last thing. You said a lot of zone from the Rams. So I am worried about the secondary, but I don't think Brown is fully healthy, and no quarterback has a bigger delta in his numbers this year versus man and zone than Hurts. So
he's gonna hold the ball. That's
he's
the
gonna
key
hold
to
the
making
ball.
it like the Darnold
that
situation.
Should allow for some sacks. Just him holding the ball too long, which should kill some drives. All right, for my second pick in the 4th overall, the divisional round 6-pack, I'm going with the Baltimore Ravens first half money line -110. I don't have to get into the numbers. I mentioned them incessantly all year. Lamar Jackson, first half, God, it's the most profitable quarterback in NFL history in the first half. You slice it as a favorite, dog, pick, whatever you want. It's all 66, 67, 68% against the spread. I make this game right around a true coin flip, but I do like the Ravens in the first half for a number of reasons. And in a silent, even in Buffalo, I think the Ravens are a bad matchup for the Bills.
They
So,
are.
like, number one, the Bills' run defense is vulnerable. They'll get some stuffs, but it is not a great run defense. They allow a ton of explosive runs. That's a nightmare against Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. The whole D has been trending down, by the way, over the second half of the year, even as they got a little healthier and they faced a fairly easy schedule of opposing offenses all year. They're the second worst defense in the NFL in defending over the middle of the field. That's problematic against Baltimore, with or without Zay Flowers. I mean, Zay Flowers, they missed Zay Flowers like play action. But the first meeting, they blew out the Bills, and he didn't do much in that game. But the Ravens can stop the Bills' rushing attack without doing anything, without changing their defense. The Bills can't stop the Ravens' rush offense without drastically changing what they want to do, which I think they're going to have to do. They're going to have to go heavier here. I know in the first meeting, it's worth mentioning that they were playing Balen Spector and Nicholas Morrow. I think the Eagles just signed at linebacker to the practice
They were
squad.
down all their
And
linebackers.
Teron Johnson was hurt. But I think they're going to have to go a little bigger here. I mean, I think 30% of the time, which is high for them. They went a little bigger in the first meeting, but it still didn't matter. I mean, Ravens last week, they went multiple backs or tight ends on 89% of their snaps. They even had 15 snaps with Josh Jones as their sixth offensive lineman.
Both of these teams love that. Love six
Yep.
offensive linemen. Yep.
And Bills use base defense only 3.6% of the time, and they've used dime at 16%, which is the highest base, the lowest. So like the Ravens could just come in and bully them. They're going to have to adjust, bring your safeties down maybe. I mean, the whole McDermott tenet is like, let's take away the explosive play, make the teams work their way down the field. I don't think you can do that here. Maybe you can, but in the first meeting, the Ravens ran it 34 times for 271 yards, 8 yards per carry, and blew them out. So I think Buffalo's going to have to eventually cheat against the run. It's just a bad matchup because the Ravens are going to be able to throw over the middle of the field, take advantage of the Bills' linebackers and safeties, which is their weakness. Milano is just not the same player that he's been pre-injuries. Yeah, and the defensive line I think is a bit undersized overall. It's not an elite defensive line. And on the other side of the ball, Josh Allen, unbelievable. I can't wait for this matchup of Allen versus Mahomes. But it's not like his receivers aren't elite. And that's what you need to beat this Ravens defense. Ravens pass defense talked about the changes that they made schematically, communication-wise, but they're still a bit vulnerable, in my eyes, to very elite receivers. You even saw that last week with the Steelers. The Steelers had some deep shots to pick. And so the way that I'd see this game playing out is the Ravens being able to sustain drives on a much more consistent basis. Bills are probably going to come out and they're not going to have much success running the ball. It's probably going to kill a few drives. And I think the Ravens ultimately are up at the half just based on matchups but I still think the Bills can easily win this game. And I might look to bet the Bills second half. This is crazy in that Ravens have Lamar Jackson, who's the most profitable quarterback in NFL history in the first half against the spread. Do you know who's the most profitable quarterback in NFL history in the second half against the spread? Josh Allen. 74, 44, and 3. 63% most profitable NFL history. 15-2 against the spread in the second half this year. So how do I think this game might play out? Obviously turnovers and flukes and whatever. I mean, anything can happen in this game. The margins are so thin. But then second half, Bills playing from behind, seeing Ravens give up some leads. It's unleash Allen and let him just go crazy, abandon the run. You're playing from behind. And I could see the Bills coming back and winning this game with Allen just going into God mode with his legs, hitting some deep shots after he creates time, because the Ravens aren't going to get elite pressure here. Bills' offensive line is good. Ravens don't really generate a ton of natural pass rush, especially on early downs. So I think it might be more of a struggle for the Bills in the first half. But it's just not a great matchup for Buffalo. The heroics of Allen could still win them this game with the Ravens secondary giving up some chunk plays late. But Bills have also been, I mean, there's some variance things working against the Bills, like they've benefited more than any team in the NFL in turnovers, both offensively and defensively. They've also played a much easier schedule than Baltimore, and Baltimore's the unluckiest team in the NFL with penalties. So we'll see if they have some procedural penalties on the road. That could be a thing, but they've been just, I mean, just your judgment call penalties, by far the unluckiest team in the NFL this season. But I'm going to trust Lamar in the first half, and I might look to come back on the Bills in the second half. If history repeats itself, Ravens would cover first half, Bills cover second half. But give me Baltimore first half money line.
Yeah, I can see it playing out like that. That kind of leads me into my next pick. We can talk more about this game. So for my third pick and the fifth overall of the divisional round 6-pack, I'm going with the Ravens Bills under 51.5. Oh man, this is a scary one, I admit, but I just can't get to a 50+ total in this game given the circumstances. Because first of all, mentioned in that first matchup, Bills were severely undermanned on defense and in areas that could have helped them tremendously against Lamar Jackson specifically and this Raven offense. And it was still a 35-10 game. And this was at the point where the Ravens defense was one of the worst in the league. I mean, this wasn't post week 11 when they have some of the best numbers in the league, which they do now. So yes, I do think these coaches are going to make adjustments. But if you look at just how the Bills are kind of approaching this, they're saying, okay, well, how are you going to stop the Ravens run game? You like to play nickel. You got thrashed in the first meeting, and they're saying, well, a lot of it was that we got we didn't have the offense really couldn't possess the ball, and we just kind of kept giving them leads, and then we had to play from behind. So I think what the Bills were doing last week against Denver wasn't just like a game plan specific thing against Denver. There were aspects of it with the run heaviness, but I think that it was kind of a tune-up to trying to be that ball control offense against Baltimore. And I know they're hard to run against, but the thing what I see Buffalo doing here is Reggie Gilliam, who's been playing a lot more down the stretch, even in important games, and a sixth offensive lineman, maybe both. So that's something when you talk about, okay, how are you going to beat, how are you going to run against a Ravens team that just doesn't give up yards? It's a run. Well, most of those downs are coming against normal, offenses, 1-1 personnel, maybe some 1-2. But when you start getting into these jumbo formations, that's how you kind of even the playing field out. So I think you see Buffalo do a lot of that. And on the other hand, I think Baltimore is going to continue to want to run too, because that's where they have their edge. So they're going to bring out heavy personnel. But Buffalo has struggled. I think they're third worst in EPA against 2-1, which is a fullback. Not many teams can do that. Baltimore has Ricard. So Baltimore is going to come out and force Buffalo to, kind of defend that read option. But Milano being back, he was playing a new role, third down spy. That was doing some good things against Bo Nix. And we know Buffalo still is going to sit back at times. And I do agree. I think the explosives are a concern, but we had an explosive on the first play of the game against Buffalo in that first meeting. I think it was 87-yarder for Henry, and it still ended on 40, landed on 45, I believe, for the full game. So now we're getting 51.5, and I'll leave it with this some trends. So number one, this is a luck under. Both teams have been getting lucky scoring wise, and that takes into account how amazing Allen and Lamar already are. It's not saying like they're scoring, over expected because they're just great at under expected because they're just great quarterbacks and those guys are going to score over expected. Like they've still been getting lucky. I mean, there's, things like turnovers, like you mentioned, field goals, variance, penalties, things like that. And these in the playoffs, like luck unders crushed normally, but in the playoffs, when you have this is a -9. When you have anything over a 1.25 in the playoffs, 24-8, 75% hit rate to the under on these. And my favorite stat, Baltimore, 7 times they've been in the playoffs with Lamar Jackson. They have yet to go over a total. So give me the under 51.5. Bills Ravens. It's scary. I know. You might get a better number too. This is another one. I'm gonna wait a little bit. You're gonna get some weather. But you're gonna Lamar even admitted he gets a little uptight in these kind of games. Both teams could go run heavy. So yeah, like the under.
No real feel. I would worry about. I don't hate it.
I'm worried.
Outdoors.
I'm worried. Don't get me wrong, but like you said, you got to be uncomfortable with some of these.
Freezing
right?
cold.
Like...
I would actually maybe even prefer the first half under. My biggest worry about it would be like a fourth quarter just back and forth when these quarterbacks are unleashed. Like there's the other thing is that you're not going to get many. Neither of these. I don't think either team's going to get great pressure. Neither team really blitzes much. Neither quarterback takes sacks, and they're going to be able to use their legs to extend drives. So it's going to be hard to get like negative plays in this game to kill drives. But
you got Carl Jeffers though. You got Carl Jeffers 11-3 to the under postseason. So
yeah, it's a high total, but it doesn't look like there's going to be wins. For what it's worth, wins Texans Chiefs. You could have gusts like 25, 30 miles per hour going corner to corner. It's going to feel like 10 degrees. Rams Eagles, you could have gusts around 20 miles per hour, but looks like 8 to 10. That could impact some long passes, maybe some long field goals. In this one, it doesn't look like there's going to be maybe gusts up to 13, so it's not really impactful.
It's like right on that edge. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but the sustain is like, but it's going to feel like it's 7 degrees. I'm just super curious to see how the Bills play this. That's probably my biggest overall concern is like, do they change their ways? Because I think that they just say like, look, we're going to prevent explosive plays like they normally do, and you're going to make the Ravens march field. They're going to take time. The Bills methodical in the way that they drive the field. Like, but if the Bills like say like, hey, we're going to change up what we do, like McDermott changes up, it's not easy to do. But if they like just sell out to say we're not going to let Lamar and Henry beat us, and there's no Flowers, like you try to beat us through the air, maybe that leads to a bunch more explosive plays. I don't know.
That could happen, but I just feel like
I'm just throwing out
within reason. We know teams are going to switch up their schemes a little bit for the playoffs, but I think like those could like there's always going to be flaws when you're talking about an under 50 plus, but I think that from what we know about McDermott, he's still not going to want to like just come out and jeopardize like this chance. Like after losing to the Chiefs so many times, like he's going to be aggressive in spots, but I don't know if it's going to be selling out to, and I think he would rather make this Raven offense drive the field without Zay Flowers and just, if he could just limit some of the explosives because they have their linebackers back, like, Milano, Bernard, and they're switching up like schemes in terms of, who does what, and they different spies and different schemes with the, who takes Henry and who takes the quarterback. Cause like the Steelers, I can't believe this. They just had they just did like the scrape, whatever, where the guy loops around and then the safety replaces. Like and Watt gets the running back. They just did that for the whole game. Like, and it's like the third divisional matchup. They didn't switch up their scheme at all. So I think the Bills are going to be a little more multiple. And yeah, so that's kind of why I like this under. I just think we're just looking at this team's like, oh, these are just offensive juggernauts. But both of these coaches, I think, or both of these defensive coaches, I think, are gonna throw in some wrinkles too. Like it's, you know what I mean?
I'm just offering devil's advocate. I don't hate your bet. Outdoor divisional round under. I don't know if first half under would maybe throw a little in first half
like,
under.
The thing about it is I got to look at the numbers, but I believe Lamar is like, because that's the thing. You like the Ravens in the first half, right? Like Lamar could just make some crazy throws. A lot of times what you see happen is these games kind of bog down, and that's how the Ravens give up these leads. Like it's not necessarily they just get into these shootouts. It's like they have like 20 at the half, and then they score 3 in the second half or something like that, So I would rather full game at the 51.5. You're getting over key number 51. Never gone over in a Lamar playoff game. So like, yeah, I don't mind both, but I think this is a spot where the full game does make some sense because you're also going to you'll probably see some good adjustments from both teams, very well coached defensively too. So I think you'll see some decent defensive adjustments as well. So yeah.
Yeah. The other thing, one of the reasons I like Ravens first half, I would just throw this out there. Orr's made some great adjustments second half of the year.
Yep.
with, putting Hamilton back at safety. A lot of that was player driven, from people that I know. But the communication changes adjustment wise, I trust McDermott more than Orr for defensive adjustments in the second half.
You know what's
Um,
interesting? I didn't realize this, but the Ravens around that same time that they started making all those moves, they signed Dean Pease, our old friend, as
yep,
a as a
yep,
consultant. And I mean, he's had some bad defenses when he doesn't have the talent, but like his mind, that's probably playing a role too. So yeah, it's another thing
for
working in the
sure.
defense's favors. But yeah, let's take it under with two
Um,
MVPs. Yeah, that's how we're closing it out. We got one more pick. Where are you going?
all right, for my third pick in the sixth overall of the divisional round six pack, staying in Ravens Bills, I'm going to go with Isaiah Likely over 33 and a half receiving yards. I think this number is too low. I don't think Zay Flowers is going to play. Even if he does, I don't think he's going to be fully effective. And he's not going to be at 100%. And if he does, they're still going to go with a ton of two tight end sets. Likely he's going to be out there a ton. He's going to get even more favorable matchups against the Bills in the middle of the field, against their safeties, against their linebackers who have to be so concerned about the run here. And what the Bills do is they either give up they give up a lot of explosive runs, but they also will stuff a bunch of runs on early downs. So I think the Ravens could be in a bunch of, they might get a lot of Henry first down big runs, Lamar first down big runs, but there's going to be some times when they're in second, third, and long. And I think Likely is going to be open all over in the middle of the field here. Last week, mentioned it, Ravens, multiple backs, tight ends, 89% of snaps. Without Flowers last week, here were the wide receiver routes. Bateman 21, Wallace 15, Aguilar 10, Miller 5, Walker 1. Likely was out wide 28 times. In the slot 15, he ran 19 routes. He was basically their wide receiver 1 last week. And that was in a blowout. I don't expect the Ravens to blow out the Bills. So I expect the game state to be favorable to Lamar having to throw for most of this game. And I do think the Bills are going to have to focus more on the run. Can't defend over the middle of the field. Safeties are extremely vulnerable. Linebackers are vulnerable in coverage. Might have to go heavier, more snaps, which makes them even more vulnerable. So, yeah, I like Likely to have a huge day here. We'll also, well, I'll get your thoughts there. You like that as well?
Yeah. I think the market's too low on Likely. I totally agree. I think either way you look at it, Baltimore Buffalo tends to be, smaller, but they're gonna have to play bigger. So that just helps with having a guy like Likely who is still a tight end, still has some size, but also has that speed that now he's the guy that can, because you're always gonna have Andrews on the field. Like we know that. So Likely by adding him into the mix, you kind of you have that edge back where you still have a size guy, in your run game, but you have that speed and that wide receiver like ability out wide. So yeah, I think he would if they if he could match up on a corner and do some if that's how they want to play it too. So there's a lot of different ways which I think like
And I don't think Flowers is going to play.
I don't either. I'm not expecting
I think
him
he's
to.
70-80% to not play.
Yeah, I would say he's doubt. I would consider him doubtful, even though there's no like designations yet. But if you just look at Likely's routes run rate over the past few games, most of the season been in that 50-60% range, kind of splitting down the middle with Andrews. Maybe Andrews started getting a little more and over the stretch run, but last couple of games it's been right up around 80%, 75-80%. So and like you said, there's been numerous blowouts. So there's even some room to grow on that. Because if the more you're passing, the more that rate can kind of creep up. Let's get into our money line underdog parlay. And because we switched the six pack up, this time of year, there's less games. It's funny because for everyone listening out there, Stuck and I actually debated not doing the segment. We were like, oh well, we could just do the six pack and kind of get through everything there. But we decided to do a money line parlay, and what do you know? We got it to cash with the Houston Texans and the Los Angeles Rams. So that was nice to see. We're gonna go with some our favorite long shot bets for divisional round. So and we'll get the parlay odds for that as well. So Stuck, who you got?
Let's go Likely touchdown 4-1 out there. Anytime touchdown. Just talked about it with his prop and because could be some Bills red zone regression, but great matchup. And yeah, I think he's going to find his way in the end zone. Came close last week. Got an 8-1
Oof.
parlay that was just riding on him, and he got down to like inside the 5. I was hoping they rewarded him, but they did not. And yeah, so I like likely. My long shot that I consider CJ Stroud to lead the game in rushing 40-1.
Ooh, that could I mean, yeah.
Because the Chiefs have like this huge conglomerate. They go pass heavier. And the Mixon, I don't think they're gonna have much success running the ball. And you just could see Stroud scrambles, and then like if they're down late, he's just like running all over. I don't know. I thought 40-1 was kind of crazy. So
I like that. I like that. I could see that because Stroud hit a second gear on that scramble last week. So he's you know, if that's what it takes, and it just very well might take that to sustain any kind of offense. I mean, we saw it happen with Sam Darnold late in that Rams game where he should have been taken off the whole time instead of holding the ball and falling backwards. So yeah, Stroud might have to do some of that. And it's funny because another candidate for that same market, well, I'm actually going to go for my long shot, Xavier Worthy for touchdown at plus 220. But I think he's an interesting bet to lead the game in rushing as well, just because, like you said, the running backs kind of cancel each other out, tough matchups. But Worthy's been getting a lot of carries these last few down the stretch, you know. So I think that could be an extension of the run game for the Chiefs in this one as well. And he has 3 rushing touchdowns, which is pretty rare for a wide receiver to have, you know, period. And especially one that's not being used like a Debo Samuel. So Worthy in each of his last 3 games before resting, or I think he played 1 snap in week 18, meaningless game. But in those 3 games before that, 3 carries for 30, 3 carries for 10, and 2 carries for 10. He got a touchdown in the Cleveland game, and a touchdown opening day, and also a touchdown from 3 yards out against the Saints early in the year. So I like him to have that little added boost on the ground, and mention that he's just got the best matchup, in my opinion, of the Chiefs receivers, because he can go in the slot and avoid, you know, Stingley and those guys that kind of, you know, dictate his matchup. And he's got the speed in what could be, you know, a weather game, a game where it could be a little bit of a grind at times. So yeah, I like Worthy, he's also scored in his last 2 games as a receiver as well. So a lot of ways for him to do it. Parlay both of these 4-1 for likely, Worthy at plus 220, and you get plus 1,500. So nice little juicy one. But yeah, I like both of these a lot individually.
by the way, did they put anytime touchdown? Yeah, as you know, I'm not really a prop better. So postseason lines get more efficient. Yeah, it's not my area of expertise. Do they put anytime in the playoffs, anytime touchdown for every single possible player, or no? Like offensive?
Offensive, yes. Defensive, it's usually not anyone. It's just a team defense. So it's
offensive. I'm just talking about offensive skill position.
Yeah,
like everybody.
Sometimes they even put guys who are like inactive. Like I think, like because the books won't, there'll just be no action. But like sometimes they won't even clean it up. So last week, I think I was looking to get like Whittington or something, and they didn't even have him up, but they had like Tyler Johnson who was inactive. It was weird. So, but yeah, you'll see every offensive player up, and no touchdown.
I don't know what the odds would be, but Tegan Quitoriano.
Yes. He's gonna play. He's got to be activated, right?
He's activated. I think.
Okay, we're good. Yeah,
I think he's going to be activated.
That's hilarious because I told Gifford and the guys on the Convince. I think it was the Convince Me like pregame last week. I was like, if this guy's active, we got to hammer his touchdown. But he wasn't. He didn't get activated. But so it's funny that you say that this week.
Yeah, he has 7 career catches, 2 touchdowns. 1 came against the Chiefs. He's been hurt. Yep. I expect him to get the spot that Kate Stover's spot because he just got placed on IR. But he was a full participant in practice yesterday. Tight end. We talked about the Chiefs matchups against the tight end. He also just, if the Chiefs blow them out, could be in there like late.
Yeah, exactly.
And get a bullshit touchdown. So I'm going to be looking out to throw some cash change if I see anything on Quitoriano, who I don't think he's played in like 2 years. No,
he played some snaps earlier this year. He just got hurt right away. But
he played last year? He did. He had 2 catches last year. 2 catches. And they had 7 catches the year before, 2 touchdowns. But But if they have to go two tight end set stuff with blocking, and he might get some run here. It's just him, Irv Smith, and
Irv Smith's revenge game incoming.
So Couturiano need to keep an eye on. But
yeah, that's a good call. I like that. Yes, that'll do it for us. Before we get out of here, just want to remind all our listeners, if you're watching or listening on your phone and you want to instantly tail any of today's picks, go to the episode description. We've got DK links for all of these picks. If you click those links on your mobile device, your DraftKings app will open with the bet slip for that pick. It's very, very convenient, a great way to tail right away and not miss the best lines. That is a wrap for us. Appreciate y'all listening. As always, you can hear more of me every week, going throughout the postseason with my guy Sean Kerner, talking fantasy, DFS, player projections, all that good stuff for the postseason on the Fantasy Flex podcast. And of course, you can hear Stuckey, his final college football episode of the season, tomorrow over on Big Bets on Campus, the podcast. Make sure you check out Big Bets on Campus. You can find Stuck on X at Stuckey2. I'm at Chris Raybon. We're at those same handles on the free award-winning Action Network app. Let's go. Keegan Couturiano, baby. Let's get this fight.
Tight end weekend. Let's go.